r/ask Reddit. What is a dying tradition you believe should be preserved? Whenever I travel, I love to send postcards to my young family members. Sometimes I go to an antique store and find vintage postcards from the area I'm visiting. I've gotten positive feedback. They all seem to think it's neat to get them. But recently I received one from a young family member and it was a nice surprise. I have the habit of preserving mailed letters. I have my grandpa's letters. He is no more. I have my dad's foreign tour postcards that he posted when he was away for long. I have some cousins who send greetings, tiny gifts along with a handwritten letter. It says that took the effort for me. Harvest festivals. It really only works in small to medium agricultural towns, but it really grounds one to the seasons and agricultural production. Right now in Lodi, California, we are having the annual Lodi Grape Festival, themed after the winter grape harvest season, and it's been going for something like 60 years. All I can think of is Parks and Rec. I love the festival in Lodi. We always went as a family when we lived there. Trick or treating. It seems like a lot of families today are opting for the convenience of trunk or treating, where everybody gets their cars and park in a cul-de-sac and hand out candy from their trunks. I've heard people call it safer, but honestly, walking around and seeing everyone's house decorations and costumes was the fun part, not just getting the candy. I think it's kind of sad that a lot of kids are missing out on the experience equals. This is disappointing. I took my daughter for the first time last year and she absolutely loved it. To her it was so magical. I would never want this to stop. I bring out a fire pit, awning, and cooler with drinks for parents. I love socializing with my neighborhood and enjoying the excitement for the kids. Rain or moonlight, I'm out there. I agree. Walking the neighborhoods was my favorite part. Every house was unique in their own way. I moved to a small town and we have to go to the trunk in order to do something nice. However, the whole town gets together and interacts. So it's nice to meet who runs the small feed store, or the only salon. The firefighters are involved with their trucks and the police officers show off the canines. So it works out. Local split screen multiplayer on consoles. Open bracket. We all used to play 4-player split screen on a 22-inch 480p. Now the screen is 4 times the size, we got 10 times the pixels, but no games to split on. WTF. Not to mention the consoles are many times as powerful as previous ones. My friend's internet is out in his dorm room, so his dormmate and I were all sitting around playing split screen Halo 3 on his Xbox 360 like the good old days. It was the best. Competitive board games with family. It's a nice time to spend with them. Nothing like stabbing your brother over Monopoly. We've all done it. Rip only childs. Well, you already have a Monopoly then. Castles. No one builds a good castle anymore. I mean, sure, there are castle-like buildings, but not a good 11-foot thick wall of stone castle. This has always been on my if I was insanely wealthy list. I would build an honest-to-God castle in the same style as they did in the 12th century. I know a couple who did this. They retired and built Glacier Castle in Indiana. They are huge history buffs, so they made the architecture very accurate to a certain time period, even though it meant limiting which structures' architectural trends they could incorporate. The idea was to make a bed and breakfast, but the place was so novel that they end up leasing it out for big events, like weddings and Ren fairs. It's not far from a wildcat preserve. RSVPing. Saying you'll be somewhere and actually showing up. Consistency, etc. I blame a lot of the rise of flakiness to cell phones. It's a lot easier to cancel last minute when you can reach someone who's already made it to your designated meeting place. Whereas before, everyone had a phone. If you made plans, you pretty much had to be there unless you had a good reason not to, or were a complete dong. I mean, I still think flaking is a dong move, but it's way easier to do it nowadays. Been a while since we had a good gladiator match. I almost feel like death fights will happen again at some point in the future somewhere. MMA has been mainstream for a while and eventually someone will want to push the envelope with something more brutal like MMA did back in the day with boxing. I doubt it will be straight up death matches, but something crazier will definitely come around sooner or later. Subremesa. That time at the end of a big dinner with friends and loved ones where you just sit around the table drinking wine and shooting the shit. Forget doing the dishes. Forget running off to go and do whatever. Just make some time to sit and spend time with people and enjoy some good dessert and a nice glass of whatever without getting drunk for the sake of it. My entire family does this except we brew a pot of coffee. It's like an unspoken thing after dinner that everyone has a cup of coffee and hangs out. I feel like every Hispanic family I know does this. I always hated it as a kid, but now it's nice to drink some good coffee and have a random conversation. Oh, I'm white from New England, lol. That's pretty cool that it seems to cross cultures. Sitting on your porch. Sitting on my porch right now, staring at my phone instead of watching the world go by. Bringing flowers on a first date. It's so cheesy, but no one has ever brought me flowers. I have, however, received countless dong pics. I am older. I used to do that on first dates. Several women were freaked out by it. On the first date with my now wife, we met for a coffee. I actually brought her a slice of an apple pie that I had baked the day before. We met via OKC and had talked for a couple of weeks prior, and I had mentioned that I bake a really good apple pie. She was surprised and enjoyed it. Drive-in movie theaters. We've got one about 15 minutes from me and it's the best. Like $6 to get in. And they don't kick you out if you want to stay for another show after the one you went to see. Since we're in FL, it's better to go during the winter when it's cooler and less bugs. Dress cozy. Bring some camping chairs. Whatever snacks and drinks you like. My friends with kids bring them and set them up with blankets and pillows in the back of the truck. It's a great time. My only complaint is that for horror movies or stuff like that where they're darker in color, it can be a little hard to see, but whatever. You can bring the whole squad for less than $20, so it's forgivable. Canning and preserving food. I grew up doing this and it's something I still do. There's nothing like eating chili in the winter with tomato juice you made yourself or eating homemade strawberry jelly. My friends didn't grow up in that lifestyle but enjoy when I bring them fresh jelly in the spring. This is actually making a comeback. Not the Kardashians kind either. Lots of colleges and co-ops are offering classes in food preservation. And not just canning. My wife teaches a canning class. I teach an intro meat preservation class. Stores being closed on holidays. It's dead already, but was so much better. We treat retail workers like second-class citizens when we expect our stores to be open on holidays. Best part of working retail on holidays are when you're trying to close the store, which means that you have to stop people from coming into the store. Never had so many people tell me how you're ruining my Christmas by not letting me buy this thing at the last minute. Like, dude, we want to go home to our families too. When I was in retail, I volunteered to work on Thanksgiving. We got paid time and a half, and I have really bad memories surrounding the holiday, so it was a good distraction. I had a customer say something like, "Wow, it's a shame they're making you work today," and I responded with, "Well, some people really need to buy craft supplies on Thanksgiving, and luckily I'm here to sell them to you." He turned bright red. Singing sea chanties. You'd enjoy my local pub. We have been known to burst into random sea chanties. We do a pretty good version of the Hobbit drinking medley too. Ooh, of the year was 1778. How I wish I was in Sherbrooke now. A letter of marque came from the king to the scummiest vessel I'd ever see. That Irish one with the rings that indicate whether or not you're interested in dating anyone by the way you wear them. I think the current iteration is that girls who aren't interested in dating will put on a fake wedding band, and those without a ring are also not interested. The Clador ring. For those who don't know, it's a ring with two hands holding a heart. The idea being referenced is that the wearer would flip which way the heart was facing depending on if she had a special someone or not. I might have gotten this flipped if the ring was oriented so it looked like the hands were presenting the heart toward the fingertip, away from the wearer. Then she is looking for love. If it was flipped, heart being presented to the wearer, she was already in love or spoken for. It's also just a cool design in general, and being a male in an Irish family, I was super disappointed that I wasn't allowed to wear rings. Stained glass window making in the style and quality of Louis Comfort Tiffany. A lot of traditional craftsmanship is being lost. Now you could probably draw something in Photoshop and 3D print it with colored plastics. Everything's too easy, and I think there's something about the actual handwork that goes into something you build. LAN parties. Me and my friends missed the days we'd bike to each other's houses just to play Halo 3 all night long, so we started having LAN parties again. It's so much fun. Handwritten letters. I'm not sad to see the greeting industry die. Duck $6 for a ducking card. And I say this as a former Hallmark employee, but I wish it was more common to send handwritten letters. They're treasured in a way you can never treasure an email. Having something handwritten is also such a meaningful connection, and keepsake if needed. I would do this if my handwriting wasn't actually just cuneiform. I started this tradition when my first was just a baby, but I write letters to their future selves. I mention the little things going on in life so it will be similar to reading a diary from someone else's perspective. I fold them and put which child and date on the front, then store them in a marked box. If anything happens to me or my memory, they will have the box of memories, or on a happier note, just to go through them together when they are adults. I thought you literally meant dying tradition isn't something you do for the deceased, and I was going to say mummification, but then I saw the comments and realized I'd be dreadfully wrong. I think family dinners are dying in most American households. I know in most other countries people aren't so bent on work, so they make the time for regular family meals. I'm from an immigrant family, and most nights of the week we all sit down for dinner together, and realized from talking to some of my American friends most of them didn't do that regularly. I like your ideas better. I want a Viking funeral. Send me out the sea and light me on fire. Physical texts, be it books or written letters, and games. My old high school just did away with physical textbooks. Most of the computers and printers. Every kid is given a Google Chromebook at the beginning of the year, and they do all their work on that. It is ducking weird to me. Those things would have been broken and stolen hardcore by my generation. Can think of several. Native languages are dying off all over the world. Some organizations are trying to fight this by recording what they can. But we are still losing languages every day as the elders die. Neon signs are a dying art form, and thousands of signs stop working every year with no one to fix them, as fewer people know how to fix them. Gold leaf is another art form you hardly see anymore, except maybe on the latest food trend or fire trucks. Home economics, as they used to call it, learning the basics of cooking, baking, sewing, cleaning, and how to manage a household budget. They are useful and important things to know no matter who you are. I think genuine thank you cards for big events, weddings, are important. If I'm about to spend $200 plus, it's nice to hear that your presence was appreciated. Thanksgiving nowadays people just consider it as the day before Black Friday. Sales starting at 6 p.m. Thursday. Man, I feel bad for the poor employees. Duck the corporate minds that thought of that. I know damn well they're at home with their families at that time. Cocktails at noon. I'll drink a cocktail at your noon. My noon. Noon in East Asia. Noon on the moon. You pour it. I'll drink it. We can save this one, boys. A lunchtime pint of beer in the UK. It's good for morale. There's a reason the Navy used to give all the men rum every day right up until the 70s. So many jobs would be improved if you could duck off to the pub and drink a pint or two for an hour at lunch. One job I worked kept this tradition alive and remains the best workplace I've ever worked at. When I started my job, our office building was next door to a pub. We went there most lunchtimes. Then, after a couple of years, my team was merged with another team in another county, and our new office was on an industrial estate. Our first week there, somebody asked the other team where the nearest pub was, and they reacted like we'd asked where we could go to torture some puppies. Saying no to kids more often. This so much. Watched a friend of mine go through her entire refrigerator with her kid last night looking for something that he wanted for dinner, all because he didn't want to eat the pasta she had already made him. He's 3. It's her kid, so I stayed out of it. But were he mine, that would not be happening. Tell him no FFS. Enjoying things without having to show it off on social media. People used to do things for the sake of doing things. Now it's just for their Instagram aesthetic. People still did that. When you visited, they'd get out the vacation photos, film strips, or the worst one of all, the slideshow. Paying employees fairly for a fair day of work without expecting people to give up their family for a ducking paycheck. With modern tech, we should have been able to work less. Instead, all we've done is produce more without a proportional raise in wages. It's bullshit. Punctuality. I was raised with a pretty strict dad and am now in the military. Showing up on time is a huge part of who I am. Early in my life it went from me getting compliments and tabloids to now people making snarky comments like, wow, you're here early, or we never have people who actually show up at the exact time. Systems work better. It demonstrates mutual respect. It builds discipline and consistency and just makes us better people. Not a dying one, but a dead one. Hats. When I was young, the mailman wore one. Police, fire, milkman. I know. Really old. Nurses, even repair people wore hats. Business people wore fedoras. What I am getting at is, in those days with uniforms, people immediately garnered respect because of the uniform. There was a standard that came with a sharp, well-maintained look. These days, one can hardly tell who is your bus driver or neurosurgeon. It seems the more casual we have become, the less respect we have for each other, simply because we don't see people in those societal roles, implying order. That is not a conservative observation. I am actually very liberal. I just think better defined roles made for a more respectful society. Probably not going to fly, but there is my 2 cents. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.